All right, seniors, here we go. Second half of Beowulf. And I got a different angle here with my camera, trying out some different things. Just, testing stuff out. Still trying to get this right. So yesterday we left off right before we got into the monster's lair, which is at the end. Grendel's dead. And now we're looking at what happens with his mom, which is the next monster we're going to face. So let's look at the monster's lair. Now, really, the monster's lair has two main purposes in this short little passage. And really, it's only a small bit of 51 and most of page 52, and then it's finished. All right, but really, that we're seeing that monsters were seen wandering. Monsters. So there's more than one, which Beowulf probably wishes he knew ahead of time. So there's another monster, and we know they've been wandering into what they call secret places. And then they list places like caves and the forest and things like that, which I've always felt that, especially these ancient texts, and I think, when I say ancient text, I don't know if that's the right term here. Ancient's a bit much, but still, these older texts, as well as modern texts, especially if they're intended for a younger crowd, as well as the older people, which, younger people would have heard Beowulf since they were kids. It would have been told at festivals and things like that. But a lot of this is not just entertainment, it's instructional. It teaches us what our values should be. It teaches us what things we should not like. But it also teaches kids things like, hey, look, the forest, these caves, scary places. Monsters live there. Don't wander out of town and go into them, which I think is a really useful part of these. So really, when we look at how these works help shape culture, and again, we talk about our big unit lesson, not a unit lesson, our big year lesson is about the power of language. And the power of language here to control behavior, to teach kids what's right and wrong, to teach them, the way they should or shouldn't be. It really shapes a culture, all right? So we know that that's a good part of this. Also, notice the change in Hrothgar. He now, instead of letting Beowulf ask him if he can kill Grendel, he begs Beowulf to step in and take on Grendel's mother. So, we see a definite shift in power here to where, it's obvious Beowulf was the strongest in this pairing to begin with, but now, we see Hrothgar, definitely leaning down towards Beowulf. All right, now don't worry, Beowulf's not going to, when we talk about Beowulf being king at the end of this, he is not king of Denmark. He's going to go back to his homeland to become king there eventually, not here. All right? But that's the big parts of the monster's lair. We want to know that there's instructive qualities that are included, as well as the change in Hrothgar. Now, the next part we go into is the battle with Grendel's mother. And today, I talked about these in class. I'm filming this that day after class, which I may start doing more of, so that I can actually keep these on track with what I talked about in class. But I remember telling the kids that this part is not good to me. I feel like there's a lot of writing techniques here that leave some holes, to be honest with you. So, first of all, we get Beowulf's response here shows a lot about respect, okay? When he says, he's basically asking the king, if I'm to die, can you do these things for me? And it shows that, he has Beowulf has respect for Hrothgar, but also respect for his men. He has respect for his king, Hygelac, back in Gateland, and also even respect for this warrior that you don't know anything about, but the warrior's name is Unferth. And they mention him in line, what is that? It looks like 465, 64, 463. About 463, around 465, 460. We get this name Unferth, which is mentioned briefly at the bottom. But Unferth is like Beowulf's rival in Denmark. Okay, so Unferth is their top warrior, basically. And him and Beowulf have a bit of a rivalry that begins when Beowulf and him kind of tangle up. Not fighting, but verbally tangle up. And so Beowulf shows respect to him, saying, I want my sword to go to you if I die. He wants any treasure sent back to Hygelac, so Hygelac knows that Beowulf died bravely. And he also wants Hrothgar to take care of his men. So there's a lot of respect shown here. And then we get some strange imagery about this lake. And Beowulf sinks to the bottom of the lake for hours. So he holds his breath for all this time. And this lake must be super deep. And I guess when he gets down to the bottom, the pressure doesn't kill him. But I guess they wouldn't know about that. But it's one of those things that it hasn't aged well, to be honest with you. The fight with Grendel's mom is a much tougher fight than it was with Grendel. Remember, Grendel was just trying to get away. Beowulf was trying to keep him held in corral so he could kill him, but Grendel wanted to run. Grendel's mom has no intention of running. She wants to fight, and there's a pretty extensive section where they're fighting, and it looks like for a second Beowulf might not make it. He tries to use his sword against her. She also is immune to metal, and then eventually he throws her down, but she's quick enough to get up, flip it, throw him down, and she pulls out a dagger and tries to stab him, and his chainmail manages to deflect it. But something really awkward, and several of you in class noted this, something really awkward. Listen to this wording. It said he'd have traveled to the bottom of the earth, edged those sun, and died there if that shining woven metal had not helped. And there's a dash. It says, and holy God, who sent him victory, gave judgment for truth and right. So it's like they added in that, oh yeah, and God also saved him. Now, that really is awkwardly worded, but really what we're seeing there is, again, the idea of fatalism, that it was fated that he lived. Now, remember, the idea of fate can easily be replaced with the term God's will, and that's kind of what we're dealing with here, that it just wasn't Beowulf's time to go. At that point, and this is just beyond ridiculous, there's a magical sword hanging on the wall, forged by giants that no man can swing, but Beowulf can, of course, and it's the only sword that can hurt Grendel's mom. And Beowulf pulls it down and slices her head right off. Now, I don't know the intelligence of keeping your kryptonite in your building with you like she did, but I guess maybe she thought if she kept it safe, she'd know where it was. I don't know. It feels a little too convenient of a story device, and as far as I'm concerned. But at this point, Beowulf decides that he's not ready to leave yet. He sees tons of treasure, but he doesn't take a single thing. He wants Grendel's head. He wants to take that up so he can show it off. Now, one of my students in my honors class asked, why take Grendel's head and not Grendel's mom? Because Grendel's mom was definitely the tougher fight. Well, it comes down to the fact that Grendel's mom killed one person. She killed Hrothgar's best friend. Grendel has killed probably hundreds at this point, so he's the bigger trophy. All right, even though he was a coward, he's done more damage, so that's why Beowulf wants that. So he finds the head, he takes the head and the hilt of the sword that he killed Grendel's mom with. The sword has melted away in her blood, and he swims back up to, I guess he took him hours to sink, probably takes him hours to get back up there too. And on the way up, they start seeing a bunch of blood coming up, which is the blood of the monster of Grendel's mom. But the Hrothgar and his people think it's Beowulf's blood. They think he's dead, so they take off. They leave, but Beowulf's men stay because that's the respectful thing to do. They're hoping to find some sort of remnant that they can bring home with them. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, actual Beowulf comes out holding this massive head. We find out on the journey back, it takes 4 men to carry it. And these are big warriors, and that's how tough Beowulf is. So at that point, they had to head back to the mead hall to show off their trophy, and plop it on the dinner table in front of everyone, All right, and then there's a huge passage of time. If you look at the bottom of page 56 there in the italics, we see that a lot of time passes. Beowulf goes back to Gaetland. He becomes king eventually. He stays king for 50 years before a dragon appears, and this is where he has to do something about that. Now, a couple of things about this. The fact that Beowulf is probably in his 70s or 80s at this point and still hasn't died. Remember, this culture, dying in battle was what you wanted. You wanted to go out that way. You didn't want to go out feebly and sick. So Beowulf's been probably looking for battles everywhere, and no one can take him out. The other problem Beowulf has is he really has no one to pass his kingdom on to because, he's the last of the great mighty men, to be honest. So, anyway, there's something happens that triggers this dragon who decides to start burning villages. And I'll tell you what it is, even though your book doesn't. There was a slave, and slavery was a thing at this time too, slave from probably a different clan that was nearby, who escapes and goes to steal a cup from a tower where this dragon is, just because he's hungry and he needs to find some food. So he steals this cup, and the dragon finds out and goes berserk. All right, now a couple of really important social cues here. First of all, look at what it may seem like odd that they're not really outright decrying slavery, but they are in a way. The fact that this slave is starving to death and has to run away, and because his master doesn't treat him well, causes him to eventually steal the cup, which ends up causing people's houses and things to be burned down. So we can trace it back to that mistreatment, which I do think that's a message that's included. Remember, writers are progressive. They like to talk about social ills, and even if slavery was an element of a culture, I feel like anyone with a soul realized it's probably not right. Okay. There's also this idea about how greedy this dragon is. Think about this. This man, this poor slave took a cup, one little piece of treasure, and the dragon goes nuts. It would be like me taking $1 from Jeff Bezos, and for him to come after me with the full extent of the law, and hire bounty hunters to track me down so he can torture me to death. That's a lot for something so small. So again, there is a bunch, and we'll see it in clear, plain language here in a little bit about this being about greed, and greed being a big no-no in their culture. I feel like in their culture, this is the worst of the three monsters. Today, Grendel's mom probably becomes the worst. This will probably be the least problematic because greed today is almost lauded, and people think it's a good thing, sadly. All right, so let's look at the last battle. First of all, the title is called The Last Battle, so you know what's coming. But if you don't, we're going to get two more examples right away. They say Beowulf utters his final boast. So again, finality. It also points out up the top of page 57, then he said farewell to his followers. So, I mean, all right, Beowulf knows he's about to die. Beowulf is not, 80-year-old man is not taking out a dragon, okay? And we're very aware of that. And if he does, then man, his legend is going to grow. But he's pretty sure he won't. This is not about beating the dragon. It is about maybe harming the dragon so the rest of his men can take it out. But Beowulf's trying to die well. That's his goal here. It's not about, I'm going to beat this dragon. It's about, I'm going to go out fighting this dragon for my people, and I'm going to die with honor. Again, a concept that would definitely, when you start working on that project for me on Friday, we start talking about traits that we admire and traits that have changed throughout time. This is definitely a trait that's changed because I would say our concept of honor is much different today. All right. Line 685, we get like the fight with the dragon begins. Beowulf charges in there and wants to fight him. And if you've got the textbook with you, there's an amazing picture on 59 of him fighting. But line 685 gives you a really clear line about their fatalism. It says, for the first time in his life, that famous prince fought with fate against him, with glory denied him. He knew it, but he raised his sword and struck at the dragon's scaly hide. So Beowulf realizes that for the first time ever, fate is against him. And he knows at this point, I'm going to die. He doesn't tuck tail and run. He keeps going. It's a very brave image. Just a little further, around line 699, we get this. Edgethow's famous son stared at death, unwilling to leave this world, to exchange it for a dwelling in some distant place, a journey into darkness that all men must make, as death ends their few brief hours on earth. So he's going to keep fighting. Even though he knows the odds are stacked against him, he's going to lose, that he's just not going to give up easily, and that's a really awesome thing. Then we get, if you skip down a little bit towards the bottom of 58, there's a page break, and it's kind of like we switch scenes real quick because we see Beowulf, who's about to be defeated by this dragon, and then it clicks over to his people who are taking off. They're seeing their mighty Beowulf is going to be defeated, and so they run. And then we have one guy that remains, a guy named Wiglaf, and this is an interesting guy, and I'm going to rely here on not expert knowledge, but what it seems like to me. Now, he says Wiglaf's a cousin, but you don't really want to always assume that means blood ties. Wiglaf is from Sweden. It says his family had been Swedish once. And the Swedish people are Sweden at this time is broken into two pieces. You got Gateland and you've got Sweden. And they don't get along, if I remember right. So the fact is that Wiglaf is not naturally one of Beowulf's relatives from what I can tell. But he's the one who remains. Everyone else turns tail and takes off. And Wiglaf's got some words for them about that too. If you go down to line 745, we get these. He says, I remember how we sat in the mead hall drinking and boasting of how brave we'd be when Beowulf needed us. He who gave us these swords and armor. All of us swore to repay him when the time came, kindness for kindness with our lives if he needed them. He allowed us to join him, chose us from all his great army, thinking our boasting words had some weight, believing our promises, trusting our swords. He took us for soldiers, for men. He meant to kill this monster himself, our mighty king, fight this battle alone and unaided, as in the days when his strength and daring dazzled men's eyes. But those days are over and gone, and now our Lord must lean on younger arms, and we must go to him, while angry flames burn at his flesh. Help our glorious king, by Almighty God. I'd rather burn myself than see flames swirling around my Lord. And who are we to carry home our shields before we've slain his enemy and ours? To run back to our homes with Beowulf so hard-pressed here. I swear that nothing he ever did deserved an end like this, dying miserably and alone, butchered by this savage beast. We swore that these swords and armor were made each for all. So he basically tells them, you're chickens. You swore you would fight, and now you're running away at the first sign where Beowulf needs us. You don't deserve this. And he runs in there. He's like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. But I'm not going out like a sissy, turning tail and running. And that's a really key thing. Now, for whatever reason, and again, Wiglaf is going to show traits that we want our heroes to have. That bravery in the face of certain death is just something that today we don't even do, like small things. Like, if you don't want to play a sport if you know you're going to lose. You don't want to run for a class office if you think you might lose. I mean, all of these things show how much we've fallen from what we see here and the bravery here. And this isn't stupidity. It's not like they're dying for nothing. This is about proving that, we're going to do whatever it takes to protect our family, our people, our land. And these other people are running away. And how do you face yourself in the mirror knowing that you did this? Now, your book decides in all of its infinite wisdom to omit the entire dragon fight. I don't understand why. But it says, Wiglaf and Beowulf killed the dragon, but the old king is mortally wounded. Well, I mean, there's more to it than that. Basically, Wiglaf is able to use the shield and basically to protect Beowulf long enough for Beowulf to stab and kill the dragon. So Beowulf beats the dragon in the end, but he's mortally wounded in the process and is about to die. He asks Wiglaf for one thing. He wants Wiglaf to bring him the treasure so he can look at what he died for. Now, that is something that sticks in the craw of a lot of people. They're like, he's dying to have treasure? That's greed too. It's not. The treasure represents how his people can live on. Remember, that's how they pay their warriors. That's how they can find a way to get more people to come and fight for them and they can stay alive, because that's how you paid your people. So this is providing them with, Beowulf has given them an injection of more treasure to keep their kingdom going. So he's died for his people, all right? But anyway, the spoils, and there's a lot of treasure here, guys. I want you to know that this dragon has been sitting on a ton, all right? This dragon has got gold to the walls, all right? But look at this line about what they say about it. And this is the key line I told you about at the beginning when we said there was going to be a message about greed. It's found in line 787. He says, so gold can easily triumph, defeat the strongest of men no matter how deep it is hidden. So they're pointing out that gold and the love of it particularly will really destroy a kingdom and a person. So Beowulf decides he wants to see this treasure. Line 815, he says, when he finds it, sees it finally, he says, beholding the treasure, he spoke haltingly. For this gold, these jewels, I thank our Father in heaven, ruler of the earth, for all of this that his grace has given me. Allow me to bring to my people while breath still came to my lips. I sold my life for this treasure, and I sold it well. So the idea that he feels like he died for a good cause is lost on us, because we're like, he died for money. That's not good. But really, like I said, this is a way to protect his people for longer. Plus, Beowulf wanted to die in battle, and this allows him to go out like a hero. His final orders are that Wiglaf is going to take over. He passes, I believe, a necklace on to Wiglaf that indicates Wiglaf is now going to be in charge, which Wiglaf's the only brave person left. And this shows your importance of legacy, to carry down from one to the next. Beowulf doesn't pass it to a child or a family member, even though he says Wiglaf's his cousin. He passes it on to the next mightiest person still alive who's proved their bravery. And Beowulf stresses that he wants there to be a mound or a tower type thing built for him, and that he can be remembered, because legacy is key to not only these people but us today. Now, we may not want a tower built for us, but we want to be remembered. That means different things to different people. All right, I want to have a book or something that I've written that will live on past me, so that people can look at that and say, "Oh yeah, this was that that grumpy old teacher I had way back in 2020." That sort of thing. So that's the legacy I want to leave, beyond things like my children and that, but also something that people who don't know me will be able to look back on. Now, don't know if I'll ever have that, because I can't ever seem to get anything written, but maybe one day. All right. So Wiglaf is our new king, and then we hit the last section, the farewell. And really, guys, this is just a fitting end. They build this tower for Beowulf. They bury him. The one big detail you need to know, and that is really odd, is that they bury the treasure with him. Now, that's not what you would expect, because really, remember, this was supposed to be the treasure that was going to set these people up for a longer time. And instead, they bury it with Beowulf, and that is a huge sign of respect. It might be kind of stupid to bury that gold, but that being said, that's how much they love Beowulf, and that's how it ends. And that's a lot of this story is about living well and dying well and being remembered for your life and your death. And that is what these ancient people wanted. And you know what? We're going to talk later about how that's what we want. This isn't a big difference, to be honest. So here we go, right under 20 minutes. So let me end here. Thank you guys for paying attention. Now that we're done with these Anglo-Saxon works, we're going to test next week probably towards the end, give you some time to study. And then we're going to move on to another element. I believe our next section is going to be, we're going to be starting to get into Canterbury Tales. So one of my favorite things to discuss, most people's one of their least favorite to do. But I love it, and you'll see that when we get into it. All right, guys. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention, and we will see you again soon.